A lot of chatter going on out there, and I feel like I have a real responsibility to just make sure that everybody's got their arms wrapped around some of the latest chatter that affects the real estate industry. And you can't go far into the media these days without hearing about the next best idea from our government. What is President Donald Trump talking about with this 50-year mortgage idea? What could this possibly mean for borrowers and for us? What could it mean for real estate pros? A 50-year mortgage option as a part of a pitch to improve the housing affordability, is this just something our president is trying to leverage to try to force feed some other idea, or is this something we should consider? Let's get into it. Welcome to the show, everybody. So, President Donald Trump has floated a new 50-year mortgage option as part of his pitch to help improve the housing affordability crisis that this country is in. He describes the idea as a way to trim monthly payments by stretching the loans over 5 decades as opposed to three. Now, a key architect of this concept is the FHFA, the Federal Housing and Finance Agency. Those of you that follow politics, this is Director Bill Pulte that we're talking about here. He is the one who says the agency is working on a 50-year mortgage and some other options, such as portable, assumable loans, all of these things that could be supported by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, which of course are the biggest movers and shakers in the mortgage industry. For real estate pros, the core question is going to be, are these options practical? How would a 50-year term affect my buyer's budget? What are the trade-offs in equity and long-term costs going to be? And then what regulatory changes are going to be needed for these types of loans to be widely offered? We're going to break it down a little bit today. We're going to talk about what's actually being proposed, because the last thing we need is a whole bunch of media folks telling us how things operate. You should be going to the media to understand that there is a principle being proposed in the government. Stop going to the media for opinion. They were never designed to be opinion based authors, and they need to stop doing it. Their job is to report the fact, and if they don't have supporting factual documentation, they need to learn how to shut up. Honestly, they're clouding the world with their own political agenda, and quite frankly, as you can probably hear it in my voice, I'm sick of it. So, we're also going to talk about how a 50-year mortgage changes the math of what we're talking about in the mortgage industry. We're going to talk about some of the regulatory hurdles that this is going to come up against, the QM framework more particularly. We're going to talk about some potential benefits, some key risks, and then what the real estate pros should start looking for. My brokers out there, thank you for joining. I see a bunch of you clapping. This is awesome. We want you engaged, so please post your questions in the bottom. For those of you that are new with us today, make sure that you like the page, make sure that you subscribe, because this is our job to keep you informed. So, break it down. What is actually being proposed in this? According to what we can gather so far, and that's it, right? And I make sure to tease through multiple venues and multiple avenues of information before I quote anything. The administration is currently exploring whether Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac could guarantee a 50-year, fully amortized fixed rate mortgage alongside the same 30-year option that dominates today's market. Ultimately, if you walk into a loan, they don't even talk to you about the 15 and 20-year options that are available, because it's a more lucrative option for most of the lenders to go straight to the 30 years. It's also the most common viable option for buyers because it stretches the term to still a life legacy point of control, and it comes with some decent payment option. It allows for just the right payment mix on your P to I payout. So details are still kind of sparse on this. So I don't want to dig in too deep, but this is a hot topic and I want to make sure to get in front of it. There is no finalized product design. There is no announced eligibility criteria. There is no implementation timeline. This is not showing up tomorrow. This is not showing up this year. At this stage, a 50-year term mortgage is going to be best understood as conceptual at best. It is concept under review. This is not a ready to launch program. Very, very different. So when you are rushing over to your mortgage lender and saying, hey, I can now afford to buy a house because at a 50-year term, this is going to be less money for me. And what was keeping me from buying a home before was the monthly payment. So my debt to income ratio was staggered. It's going to take a hell of a lot more than this to fix your problem. If you are not ready to buy a house, you should not be buying a house. If you are having to fit a square peg in a round hole for you to buy a property, you should not be doing it. Ultimately, the American public is victim to the pitch of the American dream. I need to be a homeowner. Obviously, I'm in the real estate industry. I want you to be a homeowner too, but it needs to make sense. It needs to not put you in a financial risk. It needs to be something that you're already doing. You can already pay this note or you're already paying it elsewhere. And then you need to go through a class, quite honestly, so that you understand that it's not just paying a note like when you were a renter. There are other costs of ownerships in there that you need to understand. And when repairs come up, you better have put the money away to make it happen. Personally, I'm a proponent to an additional escrow being put in place for most of our first time home buyers so that when major repairs come up, they already have 5 to 10% put aside in a separate escrow account that they can pull from to do the repairs on their home that are necessary to make sure that they don't end up with a busted water heater or a bad air conditioning unit and not be able to do something about it, ultimately degrading and putting their home in a worse position of disrepair. Lucky for you, they don't listen to me out there because that would be the next thing that I'm pushing on. So, back to it. The backdrop on this is still the rate shock that we have been dealing with for the past several years. So, after peaking above 7%, the average 30-year mortgage rates have eased, but they still remain in the 6% range. National home prices are still significantly higher than before the pandemic. That combination has pushed the common debt to income ratio to a limit for many buyers, and particularly first time home buyers, that practically prices them out of the market. So, how would a 50-year mortgage change that math? A 50-year mortgage would be a conventional fixed rate loan spread over 600 months instead of 360 months. That structure lowers the monthly payment required to amortize the principal, but it increases the total interest paid over the life of the loan and slows the pace at which the borrower can actually build equity. One of the benefits of a 30-year mortgage is if you've been in the house from 7 to 10 years, chances are you've paid down enough of the principal. Equally, the housing market has consistently increased. So you should have a good chunk of equity built into your home that you can either leverage for other things like a second home purchase or repairs or refinancing options, or better than that, as an investment. You're selling your home and you're taking that money and you're able to buy your next house with it. That was the purpose behind getting people affordably involved in the housing industry. The problem is that the structure is going to lower the monthly payment. However, the slow in the borrower's equity means that when it comes time for you to sell your property at now 7 years, because that average isn't going to change, even though you have a 50-year mortgage, the amount of principal that you've paid down is minimal. You would now be stretching to a 15 or even a 20-year plan before it would make fiscal sense for you to sell the home. Analysis cites recent coverage that I've been watching that on a mid-priced home, stretching a fixed rate loan from 30 to 50 years will cut the monthly principal interest payment by a few $100, depending on the rate, obviously. But it also keeps borrowers in a high loan to value territory for a much longer time period. It will add six figures or more in a lifetime worth of interest. Charges are going to be compared against 50 years of term instead of 30 years. So, in practical terms, it trades a short term payment relief for a more expensive and a slower path to full ownership. On top of that, we need to talk about the QM framework because there are regulatory hurdles that are in place that may not ever allow this to take shape. And I want you to understand this may never take shape. The current administration is trying to push back on the things that we have gotten comfortable about in all of our financial markets, and that includes the housing market. He is trying to, as a real estate investor himself, he's trying to make it possible for one of the largest complaints in the United States, aka I can't buy a house. What's my path to home ownership? He's trying to make sure we have an option. He's not trying to push everybody into a 50-year deal. He's working with Bill Pulte to make sure that the American people have opportunity. We have to make sure that it makes good sense. So, today's mortgage regulation that exists is built around the 30-year term as the standard maximum term. Under the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's ability to repay, qualified mortgage rules, loans that receive a QM status generally must be fully amortizing and have a term no more than 30